DeVonta Smith needs to be the focal point of the Eagles' passing attack in Dallas, not A.J. Brown. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, and thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. The Philadelphia Eagles heavily involved A.J. Brown in the offensive game plan. It felt like for the first time all year last week against the Detroit Lions. At times, I would argue, I do like that they were scheming him open, but at times they took it a step further than just scheming him open. They were force-feeding him the football. 11 targets against the Lions was a season high for AJ. And again, I do not mind that at all. I completely agreed with a lot of what A.J. Brown said last week about needing to try to use him more than just as a decoy. If the defense tries to take him away, you don't just accept that and move on and give the ball to everybody else. So I do like that they were more aggressive. I like that they tried to get him involved more. But it was at the expense of DeVonta Smith, who had, yes, 2 bad drops early on in the first half. But to completely remove him from the game plan in the name of getting the ball to AJ, I think was malpractice. They took it too far the opposite way. Whereas other games, AJ Brown wasn't involved enough. But in this game, I thought it was too lopsided where it was just AJ Brown and not enough DeVonta Smith. And even I would argue, not enough Dallas Goedert. For me, DeVonta Smith against the Dallas Cowboys needs to be the Eagles wide receiver 1. I want him to get the workload that was given to A.J. Brown against the Detroit Lions. I want to see them use DeVonta Smith in motion pre-snap. I want to see them use DeVonta Smith in the slot. I want to see quick passes to DeVonta in isolation where the play is specifically designed for SMITTY. I want to see him be the first read of this offense. I do not think that A.J. Brown right now, considering the health of that hamstring, I do not think he is capable, and he will completely deny this, but the tape tells you the true story of who he is right now. I don't think he's capable of carrying your pass game right now. I think he's injured, and by the way, I don't think he's giving as much effort on certain plays as DeVonta Smith is, especially on vertical routes down the field. AJ is not moving like he did in 2024. He is not moving like he did in 2022 and in 2023. Honestly, even the first half of this season, the way he played against the Los Angeles Rams, how he played against the Minnesota Vikings, those games are proof that A.J. Brown's not shot. Like, I'm not making the argument that A.J. is suddenly having a Julio Jones-like regression right after Julio Jones left the Atlanta Falcons and we got Tennessee Titans Julio, Philadelphia Eagles Julio. I'm not saying AJ is becoming that kind of washed player at 28 years old, or remember when Alshon Jeffrey came back from injury in 2020. I'm not saying that at all. He's proven this year still he can be a top 5 wide receiver in football. Just look at that tape against the Rams in the second half. Like, that's all the proof you need. But this hamstring, I really do think, is limiting his ability to separate. Outside of plays where he pushed off or he caught the ball in traffic, A.J. Brown was not very effective in getting open for Jalen Hurts. So for that reason, and just add on top of it the fact that DeVonta Smith was already having an all-pro season this year. He was having, I don't want to say a breakout year because he's already had some incredible seasons for the Eagles. Pretty much every year since he was a rookie when he set the single-season rookie receiving record for the Eagles in 2021. But he's taking another step this year. When you add that on top of A.J. Brown's health, DeVonta should be the one that's getting that workload that A.J. got against Detroit. Against the Dallas Cowboys, who SMITTY historically has really good success against, a pretty suspect secondary with a lot of young, inexperienced, inconsistent, sometimes overly aggressive players, this to me is a Smitty game. And I just think that last week, again, I like on one end of the argument, I like that they really tried to get Brown involved more and took what he was saying seriously. They didn't shoot the messenger. They paid attention to the message instead of being mad about the way he was portraying, he was communicating the message. But to have DeVonta Smith, again, just after the month he had, where outside of Jamar Chase, nobody had more receiving yards in the last 4 games before the Eagles' bye week than DeVonta Smith. He was dominant against the Denver Broncos. Against the New York Giants, he should have had over 100 yards. Against the Minnesota Vikings, against the New York Giants, like that 4-game stretch showed. And against the Green Bay Packers, too, getting the game-winning touchdown in Lambeau in a hostile environment against a great defense. The last 5 weeks, Smitty showed that he should be featured right now over A.J. Brown. And I'm not advocating for Brown to be removed from the game plan. I just think they need to find a middle ground between the workload they gave these two against Detroit and then previous weeks as well when it felt like AJ was just not part of the game plan at all. Brown should still be featured as the second guy in this passing attack, but let's just call a spade a spade. DeVonta Smith right now, I don't know if it's because of health or just that Smith's breaking out, and I think he already was close to Brown in talent and people didn't give him enough credit for that. Smitty's the better player right now. If the Eagles want to get this passing game back on track and find some sort of consistency, I think they need to, if it's going to be about players and not plays in this scheme, which it's absolutely going to be about players, not plays, when Kevin Patullo is your play caller, DeVonta Smith needs to be that player that produces for you. So for me, if I was Nick Sirianni, if I was Kevin Patullo, yeah, you always want A.J. Brown getting the ball. Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, DeVonta Smith, all 4 of those players should be getting the football each and every week. Jahan Dotson even has proven this year that if you need him, he's going to make plays, and I would like to see him a little bit more involved in the passing attack as well. I want to see them use more 11 personnel. Stop with these 2-3 tight end looks. It does not work. It is not effective in the passing game. So you want all those players involved, and you want it to be balanced. But to me right now, the rest of the way, as long as Brown looked like he did on tape against Detroit, I think it needs to be DeVonta Smith. That's the featured player, especially considering his track record this week against the Dallas Cowboys. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at DiBiase, LOE, at Locked On Birds. Also, our YouTube community page, you can always hit us up at Locked On Eagles on YouTube. Coming up next, a lot of Jalen Hurts drama over the last couple days. I'm going to dive into it and tell you why I don't really think it's a big deal, and I'm on Jalen Hurts' side when it comes to this report. So we'll get into it coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network now the #1 sports podcast network. Another week, more drama surrounding an 8-2 football team that just wins no matter what the situation is, no matter who the team is. They've now beaten the Kansas City Chiefs this year, the Los Angeles Rams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Minnesota Vikings and the Giants, those wins were kind of whatever. Same with the Dallas Cowboys game, but they beat the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. Just some incredible wins to set this team up to potentially clinch the NFC East next week by Black Friday against the Bears. Going to that game, by the way, can't say I'm excited enough to be back in Philadelphia. I'm so pumped for that. But they could have the division clinched up. They have a commanding lead right now of the 1 seed in the NFC with head-to-head tiebreakers over pretty much everybody that's competing with them outside of Seattle. And yet the drama just will not stop. And again, the media really exacerbates it. They really play into it and exaggerate it and drag it out for weeks on end, try to add fuel to the fire for sure. But these reports are coming from A.J. Brown's public comments. This one is from somebody inside the building that anonymously is talking about Jalen Hurts. Diana Rossini, although I don't love her reporting on the Eagles this year, she touched on it last week, and then Derek Gunn kind of backed up the report that there are some anonymous sources inside the building that are frustrated with Jalen Hurts in the way that he's running this current offense. I have thoughts on this. First of all, it's the same take as I had during the Carson Wentz era. I think you're a coward if you are bashing your quarterback anonymously through the media. Put your name to it or keep it in-house. I know that a lot of those reports back in the day with Carson were true, but I just think you're a coward if you're going to anonymously leak information when you're inside the building to the media, especially this media, this market in Philadelphia, knowing what it will do. I think it will only cause harm and not good. I absolutely hate that approach. I just do not like it. Even A.J. Brown, he's using his own social media accounts, but part of why I hated so much what he was doing this year is that on Instagram and on Twitch, it's just so shady and not direct about what he's frustrated about. I don't mind at all when he's venting to the media in the locker room, explaining himself, explaining what this team needs to do better. That I totally understand. He put his name to it. He put his face to it. He explained directly why he was frustrated. He didn't waver. He didn't apologize or backtrack, but at least he was direct. Anonymous comments like this absolutely drive me up a wall, especially when your team is 8-2, trying to repeat and do something that no era of Philadelphia Eagles football could ever sniff. Potentially be on the verge of a dynasty, potentially repeating. There's only a couple teams, there's only a handful of teams in the history of this league that have been able to win back-to-back Super Bowls, and the Eagles have a really good chance to do that this year. So that's my biggest takeaway is I think anonymous sources are absolute cowards, and I hate if somebody is inside that building talking about Jalen Hurts behind his back. That, to me, drives me absolutely crazy. Nick Sirianni today said because there was no name to it that, maybe you don't believe everything you read, but I do think this is coming from somewhere inside that building. Now, let's get to the actual substance of the comments, the actual context of it. Is there truth? Is there a justification in frustration from players and coaches regarding Jalen Hurts and the way he's playing in this system? Does Jalen Hurts deserve some blame for how inconsistent the Eagles offense has been this year? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I think Jalen has been far too conservative at times this year. He's been hesitant to throw the football in tight windows, especially against zone coverage. 2nd and long, 3rd and long, it feels like at times he's just giving up on the play in the name of not giving up a fumble or an interception, not giving up the ball, and putting things on your defense. But by taking an extreme approach to that, you're kind of putting things on the shoulder of your defense. I think all these 3 and outs are just as bad as a turnover would be at times. So is there truth to the frustration if that is what people are upset about? Absolutely. I think Jalen Hurts is still a streaky passer in year 6. I still think that limits what you're able to do as a play caller. If there's truth to the fact that he's just free balling this offense when coaches don't want him to, I get why that would also be frustrating. Like, I am not exonerating Jalen Hurts whatsoever. But forgive me for also being skeptical and not believing that Kevin Patullo has some masterpiece offensive game plan week after week, and that Jalen Hurts is simply just not allowing it to shine because he's going off on his own and doing Jalen Hurts things. He's just improving the entire offense and calling audibles, like checking out of all these amazing plays that Kevin Patullo has to offer. Like, forgive me for being a little bit skeptical about that. I'm not buying that at all. I watched the tape back from that Lions game. There is nobody open. I thought Jalen Hurts was wildly inaccurate in that game on live watch. On rewatch, yeah, that definitely still was not his best performance. He definitely did miss a lot of throws. But those routes, the route tree was terrible. The game plan from Patullo was abysmal. And so I kind of get why Jalen Hurts would at times go off on his own, call audibles, check into certain plays, like maybe he did on that go ball to A.J. Brown against the Green Bay Packers on the final drive on 4th down. Like, I understand why he would lack trust in Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo. And by the way, that to me is why I think it's even more, this report is even more proof why the internal promotion of Patullo was so stupid. Like, knowing what happened in 2023 between Jalen and Nick Sirianni, the lack of trust that Hurts had in this offensive scheme, not believing in what Sirianni and that staff were building, he had a lot of issues with the way that offense was running. And that's part of why the Eagles brass, I think, kind of made Nick Sirianni bring in an outside hire at offensive coordinator as a play caller, bringing in Kellen Moore. I think a lot of it was the issues that he was having with Jalen Hurts that year. To win a Super Bowl, taking that opposite approach of hiring from outside the organization, to then promote from within, adding a guy as your play caller that's been with you from the start in 2021 and is pretty much going to create an exact replica of the offense that Sirianni ran before Kellen Moore, that decision, looking back, is even more absurd than it felt like at the time. At the time, I'm like, this feels kind of celebratory. Instead of making the right call, picking the right guy for the job, they're kind of just rewarding people inside that organization for winning the Super Bowl. And they gave him a promotion because that's his guy. It's a guy that's been with him since the start. And I think that's a strength of Sirianni's, is his loyalty to his staff and to his players, but it can also be a detriment. It can also be a weakness at times, like it was with Doug Peterson when he was the head coach. So the fact that Jalen already didn't have trust in Sirianni and this kind of offense, the fact that they doubled down on it 2 years later is crazy. So I do believe some of this report that Jalen might not trust this brass entirely, and maybe he's playing Jalen Hurts football. He's doing his own thing because he's not completely bought in. But I don't think at the same time it's this extreme story where Jalen's just not listening to coaches and he's just not running plays the way they're supposed to be run. When you look at these play calls on tape, there's not much to work with. It's pretty vanilla. It's not like there's all these different avenues Jalen could go with it, and he's just going off the beaten path. Like, I don't buy that whatsoever. I don't know. I think I'm more on Team Jalen Hurts here than whoever is leaking this report. And I think the conservative approach, by the way, that I am putting some blame on Jalen, a lot of it, though, is certainly supported and probably encouraged by the coaching staff. Like, Nick Sirianni last week continued to highlight winning the turnover battle as a priority for this football team. And Jalen has been on record this year and the last couple years of saying, like, let me out of the straitjacket. After the Rams game, he said, that's what this offense looks like. We finally stopped playing not to lose. So I think Jalen at times does play too conservative, and he definitely plays hesitant against zone coverage, but I think the coaches want this style of play as well. So I'm just not really buying into the substance of these reports, and I just hate when people leak things anonymously inside that building. It frustrates me to no end. So I'm not exonerating Jalen. There's definitely blame. I think he has been too conservative, and he's not been consistent enough as a pocket passer. But at the same time, I think so much of this is on the coaching staff. And they did not learn from past mistakes, and they are not helping out their quarterback whatsoever. They're not helping the receivers, their offensive linemen, their running backs, all their weapons. So, I don't know. For me, I think there should be some frustration on Jalen Hurts, but most of the finger pointing should be at the two coaches that run this offense, Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni. All right, let's talk defense coming up next. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are a tough matchup for the Eagles defense. How should Vic Fangio try to defend that dynamic duo? We'll get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you start the game, you want to bet live, you miss start of the game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel's live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a much bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push, hopefully this year in a wide-open Eastern Conference. It's the Philadelphia 76ers. Tyrese Maxey has already won me a lot of money on FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, we are wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day, guys. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler the Madman Rowland. Gets you started in the morning with a shot of football espresso, and then Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop to talk shop, to talk ball. 2 episodes a day, Monday through Friday, wherever you get Locked On Eagles. So the Eagles have a tough matchup this Sunday in Jerry World on the defensive side of the football. 2 weeks in a row, they're playing a team that's really effective throwing the football. They have a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the football. The Cowboys are 4-5-1. Their defense is terrible. Their run game is extremely inconsistent. But one thing they do really well, they can score points by throwing the football. Dak Prescott puts up numbers every year. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. George Pickens is having a career year and having one of the best seasons for an NFL wide receiver in the league. Right now, he is second in receiving yards, only behind JSN in Seattle with 908 yards in Dallas, 58 receptions, and 7 touchdowns. He dominated on Monday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Cowboys don't do a lot of things well, but they do one thing really well, and it's throw the football to their top 2 stars, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Now, the Eagles did a really good job last week of shutting down that Lions weaponry of Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery at running back. Jameson Williams did have a good game. He did score a touchdown, but overall, he didn't wreck the ball game. Amon-Ra St. Brown had the worst catch rate of any receiver in a single game this year. So Quinyon Mitchell dominated. 6 targets his way, no catches allowed. Cooper DeJean only allowed a few receptions for very little yardage. 1 interception in the first half. Adoree Jackson played really well. 2 forced incompletions in the second half of a close game. So it's strength on strength. It's stars against stars. How do you defend Pickens and Lamb? Now, a lot of times this year, Vic Fangio has had Quinyon Mitchell shadow a team's best receiver. But I feel like a lot of times when he does that, it's when an offense only has one true alpha dog receiver, whereas Dallas has 2. Lamb and Pickens are guys that you need to pay attention to where they are at all times, that if a play breaks down, those guys are eventually going to get open. So what do? I personally like the idea of having Quinyon Mitchell shadow CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is still clearly, I think, the superior player to Pickens. But I think because CeeDee Lamb plays a lot inside, he's a slot receiver a lot of the time in that offense, I don't think Quinyon Mitchell will shadow Lamb. I think you will have Cooper DeJean on number 88 for a good chunk of that ball game. In fact, week 1 against the Cowboys, when Lamb and Pickens both were healthy, Quinyon actually was shadowing Pickens more than Lamb. And I kind of get the logic to that. Pickens plays on the outside more, and I think he is a much bigger, more dangerous mismatch for Adoree Jackson. It sounds crazy because CeeDee Lamb's a top 5 guy in the league, and I think he could really just do wonders to hurting Adoree Jackson's stock after 2 strong games. But I just think Adoree Jackson does not match up well with Pickens, so I get why Fangio in that game thought that Quinyon should shadow him. So maybe they decide that again, but I think the way that Quinyon Mitchell is playing right now, the way that Cooper DeJean is playing, the way that Adoree Jackson has played over the last 2 games, I think that Lions game really instilled some confidence in them that, okay, Adoree can, like the Green Bay games, whatever, because the Packers didn't really have any good receivers playing in that matchup. But for Adoree to do what he did against the Lions, who have 2 really dangerous receivers, that makes you feel confident that maybe in this game, especially with the 4-man pass rush working well, they're going to drop back 7 in coverage for a majority of the time, that they don't need to shadow anybody with Quinyon Mitchell. Like Quinyon doesn't have to follow CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens, that Cooper DeJean can handle that in the slot, that Adoree Jackson can handle it if they're on the right side of the field. Now, if they're just completely keeping one of those guys on Adoree at all times, then yes, you start to move Quinyon Mitchell around the formation as you've done a majority of the year. But I think that you could play sides in this game and just say, Quinyon, you're on the left, DeJean, you're in the slot, Adoree, you're on the right, and if Pickens is over there with Jackson, we'll make sure we have a deep safety over top at all times. So I think that will likely be the approach early on, and then we'll see how DeJean and Jackson are handling those matchups. But I do also hate the idea of having my number 1 coverage corner just completely out of the battle against 2-star receivers, that an offense will just keep them away from number 27. So if that's the case, then I am going to have Mitchell start to travel with one of those guys. I would still personally say it should be CeeDee Lamb because he's a top 5 receiver in football, but I understand why it would be Pickens, considering he is a really tough matchup with his size and contested catchability over an undersized corner like Adoree Jackson. But we'll see what happens. That is going to be, I think, the most fun matchup in Dallas on Sunday between the Eagles and the Cowboys. We'll dive deeper into that matchup tomorrow. Crossover Thursday with Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. We have a squad show for you live on YouTube tomorrow that goes for an hour, and a Friday show for you as well. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Until tomorrow, that's going to do it for Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.